Happy hump day, you beautiful badass. Welcome to the Keri Croft Show. I'm your host, Keri Croft, bringing you the coolest stories to give your week that little extra something. And remember, the cream always rises to the top, so shake off the haters and be the cream, baby. Ready to elevate your self-care game? Boss Gal Beauty Bar is a modern med spa offering everything from cosmetic injectables, lasers and microneedling to medical-grade facials and skincare. Conveniently located in Clintonville, Grandview, Powell, and Easton, making self-care a priority has never been easier. Use code CROFT for $25 off your first visit. Hi, it's your girl Keri. I recently sat down with Nikki McCarthy, the founder and executive director of Sam's Fans. We had a great conversation about the work she does to honor her daughter Sam, who is the inspiration behind this cool organization. They're a nonprofit that supports music and art therapy for seriously ill kids and their families. In a few weeks, they're having their biggest fundraiser of the year called A Thread of Hope. Nikki invited me, so I'll be there. And it sounds like a really awesome event. Silent and live auction, great music by Conspiracy, Cameron Mitchell food, and we know how much I love Cameron Mitchell and food, drinks, and a fashion presentation by local boutique Thread. So join me there on October 24th at the Exchange at Bridge Park in Dublin for A Thread of Hope. To sponsor or purchase tickets, go to www.samsfans.org or DM me. See you there. Mm-hmm. We won't wear. Do you want to wear these? You look too cute to wear.
Oh, okay.
You know what
I
mean?
I don't know. However all this works. So you're my first podcast experience.
Stop it.
Yeah. So
Ever?
just ever. Like
Amazing.
I've never done one before. Not only that, it's like video and this. So it was
this is really up the ante of my excitement.
Yeah. This is my
I can't
first
believe
time.
that. That's very surprising to me, and I'm honored. I'm honored.
Yay!
Max-Dixon, welcome to the Keri Croft Show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm very excited to be here. This is like my first podcast journey. So I'm super excited.
Well, you're just delicious. Like when I saw you walking up with your hoops and your hat and like your neutrals, that was the first thing I thought of. I'm like, she's delicious.
Oh,
I cannot wait. I cannot wait to just scoop her up and bring her in the studio.
Yeah, I was excited. I was like, let me put on something that's kind of like sexy, comfy, like little mix of textures and colors and prints.
Well, it hits.
Little positivity hat. You know?
Multiple streams of peace on the front of your hat. I love that. Yeah. I think I need one of those.
Yes, you can absolutely get one of these. So my cousin collaborated with this brand on creating these like mental wellness hats.
Yeah.
And so Cozy was how I got introduced to this brand, and then I've been buying up her stuff as well because I love that. But it's a lot of these younger generations that are starting out like these really like mental wellness like brands, and it's kind of exciting to see how this younger generation is so in tune to putting peace and joy and like things out into the universe. Like they're really about like changing the landscape. Yeah. You know, so.
I need that hat not only to like for other people.
Yes.
But I also need to remind myself where you're like, okay, let's, keep it inner peace, calm.
Right.
What are you leaning into, especially in today's world where you have all this noise and energy that does not serve you. I'm really working on that shit.
Yeah. It's a tough journey, but like I think we're getting it together, like these younger kids, like they already are like seeking it out, and I'm like, I want to be like you. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like, so.
Well, I'm excited to introduce you to my community. Okay. Some who may already know you, some who may be like, who is this Max-Dixon you speak of? I think what I love about you and your journey, there's a lot of things, but the idea of just breaking a mold, the idea of the way we think something has to go down is not necessarily the way it has to go down. And so your story is one of just championing for yourself, overcoming obstacles, and just making shit happen. That's what I'm all about. Like not even just opening your doors, but just kicking them down.
Absolutely.
One at a time.
Yeah.
So you're from Mount Sterling, which is not far from here.
No, I mean, it's like an hour south drive from here.
Little town,
2 traffic lights.
You were this little girl there, and you said you always were plus sized, and you were probably always very pretty.
Well, at the time, like I didn't identify that, right? So, if we think about, 30-ish years ago, what the world for a plus size or a plus size kid looked like was kind of awful, right? Like it was just a time where that was the thing that people picked on, was being plus size, because you had like the Gwen Stefani's and all these like celebrities that were just all pencil thin, especially in the early 2000s, 90s. And so to be a different body shape than that, right? Clothes weren't made for us for that way. So what you'd have to wear was totally out of style, like male t-shirts and like big jeans, and like there was nowhere to shop.
Yeah.
And so not only were you bigger, but your clothes also visually looked different than your peers. And so instantly became like a target. And, reflectively, I can look back at those pictures now and be like, she wasn't even that big, or there wasn't anything wrong with her, but somebody said something one time, right? And it would always then stick with you. We don't realize that one time that one person says, oh my God, she's so fat. And then they tell a friend, and then they both start picking on you. And then all of a sudden you've internalized, well, they're making fun of me because I have a different body shape. So then that must be bad, right? Mm. And because they had body shapes that were what society was showing in the media, right? You would think that because the media is highlighting them as a favorable body shape, I don't look like that. There's something wrong with me.
Yeah.
Right? So for the longest time, I definitely disliked being in school, or I just wanted to find a place where people didn't pick on me because my body was different. And growing up in a very small town, there wasn't a lot of options. So as soon as there was an option to go off to college early, I took it because I just wanted exposure. I wanted exposure to the city where I could also become whoever I wanted to be, that I didn't have to be the same person that I was from preschool through sophomore year, right? Like with those same people. I could go off to this college, and if I wanted to be like, pretend that I was like super popular in school, I could pretend that, right? I got to define the narrative because nobody knew me in this space. Whereas in Mount Sterling, people had these preconceived notions that they had placed, and I lived to them because I believed whatever they told me.
Well, it's your only exposure in life is where
Right.
you're from.
Mm-hmm.
until you get yourself on the springboard and decide to jump off.
Right.
And then you realize there's a really, really big world.
And I was ready to jump. I was so excited for this opportunity to like go off to college. And so I started college early. I started taking classes, and that was the smartest thing to do because here, the state of Ohio had this opportunity where they would pay for high school students to go to college, earn college credit and high school credit at the same time. So you would graduate high school early and already with college credits.
Where'd you go to college?
So I started off at Columbus State.
Okay.
Yeah. And that was fantastic.
Because this is a big city to a girl from Mount Sterling. It's like, what the hell?
Oh, I felt like,
you're
when
like
I went to Columbus, it felt like when I was like, when I've gone to like New York, like I remember that's how I felt when I would go to Columbus, like just driving in the city, like all the big buildings and just like hustle and bustle and just a different lifestyle.
Another thing I wanted to ask, because a lot of times when someone is plus size and they're very beautiful, people like to say like, oh, she has such a pretty face.
Oh, right. The most backhanded compliment,
yes.
right?
Was that what?
So you always get that,
okay.
like as a plus size person.
And you want to just punch someone.
And you're like, well, it's just like, I get people say it with the best intentions. And maybe my face is pretty, but I'm just pretty. Like nobody walks up to somebody and is like, your pinky's really pretty, right? So I don't know why we have to feel like when we point out like that somebody's pretty, we have to point out which part of their body is pretty.
Well, we don't though. Only if they are quote unquote plus size.
Right.
Only if they don't fit a mold. Like I don't know that I've ever heard anyone say Giselle Bundchen, she has a beautiful face, or Elle Macpherson or whomever. Right. And it's such a bullshit thing that people do all the time. But when did you realize that you are very beautiful?
So I think my biggest part of my journey was when my aunt, who has always told me, she's like, you're so beautiful. She took me into a Lane Bryant store, and I think I was probably like 10 or 11 at that time. And we were looking for clothes, and I mean, also defeative, right? Like, because I was shopping in this clothing brand that was literally made for my mother, and as we were walking around looking for clothes, and she was like my stylish aunt, and she was just like, you are just as beautiful as all these models on these walls. And she was like, and there's no reason why you can't be them one day. And that stuck out to me for the longest time, is that she told me that I was as pretty as the girls in the picture, and all the girls in the Lane Bryant store were plus size models, right? And so I was like, okay, one day I can be that. And so I think about that often and kind of laugh that when I spoke into the universe, what did my success looked like as a model, my success looked like landing Lane Bryant. And so when I like spoke that into the universe, and then that came many years later, was Lane Bryant.
Yeah. Let's talk about how that came. It is so important to identify what it is that you want and to put it out there. It doesn't mean you have to go tell a million people. You have to kind of tell yourself, I'm putting a stake in the ground and these are my audacious goals. I think some people are too afraid to even tell themselves.
I think that's like what it is people are afraid to write it down, speak it out loud, right? But we all have like a dream. And my dream continuously evolves, right? And so like too is like we can establish a dream for next year. We can establish a dream for next week. We can establish a dream for 5 years. And we can also establish the timeless one that never has like a time to it. We just know we want to do that one day.
Yeah.
And so for Lane Bryant, so specifically, I would say like we'll go back that I, soon as I kind of graduated high school, I got pregnant. And, you know, I have a blended biracial family. Growing up in a small traffic light town, there was a lot of family dynamics with that, a lot of painfulness of not being accepted again and having to go through that journey. And not only did it suck to have to go through that, but it just fueled my fire again, right? Like I had already been through experiences of being told that I, you know, wasn't good enough because I was plus size, then being told that I was the embarrassment of the family, right? And I was like, I'm not going to listen to what you guys are saying, right? They were like, you're never going to make anything of yourself. You are going to end up as a single parent. And I was like, nope, you know what? It fuels my fire. When people tell me what I can't be, it makes me stronger. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to make this work. So me and my husband, and we've been together for 22 years now. And we have 6, you know, beautiful, children. And we were successful, you know, but I think it fueled my fire that I was like, we are going to defy whatever odds these people are saying, and we're going to turn it into something. So given that, right, I was 18, had Aiden, by 21, had Cecilia. And after I had Cecilia, I started working out a little bit, and really like just like the way that I was looking. I kind of actually felt pretty in that moment around 21, and started doing like a little bit of modeling. Started getting pictures done, just like TFP things. TFP means trade for pictures. And looking back, it's kind of like weird and creepy. I'm like, oh, I would never take those pictures again. But hey, like it's all a journey. We all learn. And there wasn't really like the internet out there for me to like search like how to be a model, right? So the model journey was very like just whatever you could read in magazines, whatever was published. But like the Google was still like barely there.
How do we survive? It's like you look back, you're like, how do we do anything? The phone book?
Right.
How do we survive?
I don't know how like I figured that journey out, but like somehow I did some research apparently and figured things out. So was doing a little bit of modeling, but nothing like lucrative, just kind of like tapping into that a little bit. And then my son he was about 4, started like having we just started picking up on some things that he was maybe like autistic. And so we, had him tested and we found out that he was autistic. And during that time, he needed a lot of therapy. And so I took time away from modeling and started pursuing, but I still love the art and creating. So I started doing photography. And during my photography time, had a really, that was a really great career to learn behind the scenes. And I remember, but I used to, when I was tagging before, I was always tagging Lane Bryant in my previous modeling pictures. So weirdly enough, like a couple years later, I get a message in my DMs from somebody at Lane Bryant, and they were like, hey, aren't you located in Ohio? And I was like, yeah, I am. And they were like, we're needing a model for this upcoming event. Like somebody last minute in the office like wasn't available, and they were like, would you be willing to come in and get measured? And I was like, sure, I'll come in. And so that, like, it was years ago that was planted, and somehow it just stuck out. My picture did. So like this opportunity arose a couple years later. So I go into the office and they measure me and all of it. So what I was doing in there was called fit modeling, and fit modeling is all based on being a human mannequin. So it's like having a winning lottery ticket number to have like the shoulder width exactly as this form. The form is made of 22,000 body scans that they then find like this median range, and they say this is the number for the average plus size person, right? So they start measuring me, and all these measurements, my arm length, my inseam, all started hitting these numbers as the form, and they were like, this is weird. They were like, how are you a human that has these exact numbers that were like curated from this mathematical equation? And destiny, right?
Yeah.
Just destiny is how it is like I spoke that out in the universe. Ironically, that number ended up being this thing. So I ended up having a 10-year career there. But I remember when they first told me, they were like, all your numbers hit this. We'd like you to be a fit model. And I was like, I don't know what a fit model is, but I'm gonna do my research. I'm gonna figure it out. And when I started doing research online, and I had a great team that would teach me along the way too, like all these coworkers that would help me to learn how to be the best fit model possible, learning how to talk about pattern making, learn how to speak the same language of fabrications and things like that. And so they were like, could you help us out for 60 days? And I was like, sure, because I have this photography business. Like, so 60 days, I can shut down my business to help you guys out. And hopefully you guys will find somebody within 60 days. And 60 days turned into 10 years.
So how many people ask you if it's really worth it to get a haircut by Mia Santiago?
Honestly, a lot. And honestly, it is.
I mean, she is a celebrity hairstylist in Columbus, Ohio. That's all you really need to know.
She doesn't miss, and now she has her own salon, Headspace. It is truly something this city has never seen.
Girl, I did one scalp treatment, and I would let Jake put his hands on my head anytime he wanted.
No, same. It's right in Upper Arlington where Mia cuts and styles, and Jake manages a full scalp spa, which is like a facial for your scalp and a massage for all of the stress and tension we hold in our head and neck.
I legit felt like I was on something after I got my first treatment, and my hair looks so much healthier now that all the buildup and dead skin are gone. I mean, I do love massages, but honestly, this might be even better. Plus, it has so many proven benefits for my hair health.
Truly believe you get what you pay for, and Mia and Jake are the dream team.
Use code Keri for 20% off your first visit with Miss Mia Santiago. We all know the age-old joke, why did the chicken cross the road? Well, in this day and age, cool chicks cross the road to make their way to SZN, a groovy little boutique in downtown Pal, Ohio. Located at 37 South Liberty Street, SZN offers curated apparel, accessories, and gifts from purpose-driven brands. Stop in and listen to Tara's story and the stories of the brands sold within the shop. Ask her why a hen is Zen, and receive four-legged greetings from Wally, the small and mighty shop dog. At SZN, your purchase has a bigger purpose. Mention the awesomeness that is the Keri Croft Show and receive 20% off your total purchase.
And yeah, lifetime career. I remember the first time the VP for my department, she was like, so we want to send you over to Hong Kong to work with our vendors. And I, like, being from Mount Sterling, Ohio, hearing that I was going to like Hong Kong, China, I was like, shut up. And she was like, no, like, we want to send you. And I was like, shut up. And then she goes, okay, I'll shut up. And I was like, oh my God, like, that's just vomiting out of my mouth right now, like mouth vomit. But I was in so shock thinking that this small town girl is going to travel across the world to fit clothes, like the same body that had been teased and ridiculed for being this shape was now being paid and flown and to do things and celebrated, right? Like all of a sudden, the same thing that was the hardest part of like the beginning part of my life was now the part that was making money for my family.
How empowering.
It is.
And then did you go back to Mount Sterling? You're like, oh, hey, everybody. Oh, hey, family.
Right.
Like, that, I mean, I'm sure that had to be a little interesting once everybody started getting wind, like, oh, Max is flying to how the whole phone tree goes.
Yes.
How was that?
I think it's been really interesting. So my family, who really never traveled outside of like Athens, Ohio, or like Galloway or those smaller areas, it was for me very empowering to that older generation to say, look how successful I am. And so it took, and I would say that the grandmothers of my family were always still very much like accepting of me. It was the grandfathers that were really, really hard. And my one grandfather, right before he passed, like started to make amends because he realized how successful I was and that I wasn't what he feared. And what he feared was what society had told him to fear, right? Like that's how he grew up. He was taught to fear, this blended family or not being married and having a kid and like all those things. And so when he realized that I defied all that and I was highly successful and I was in love and I was happy, right? He realized that all that was just a facade that he just unfortunately had to live with his whole life. But like, how much happier could he have been if he didn't have to fear, a different skin tone, or if he didn't have to fear that like, what would people think if somebody wasn't married and had a kid at the time? So the grandfather eventually came around. One didn't, and that's on him, and that's okay. We can't live our lives trying to please others because it'll never truly be a genuine, happy life. If that's how we're defining what success looks like, is by making other people happy.
It's the easiest thing to say, but why? It's the hardest thing for people to do.
Yeah.
It's hard to fight the noise.
Yeah, it is, because it's awkward in the time. Sometimes it feels uncomfortable as you're growing. It's sometimes painful. But once you get past that and that like unlocking freedom, it's just so much more freeing. Living under the weight of appeasing others is heavy. And you just don't realize how heavy it feels on you until you've let it go.
Yeah.
And then you're like, wow, this is kind of nice.
Yeah. And then factoid for everyone who is like the people who are living under that cloak of heavy, dark weirdness, you're never going to get there.
Right.
You're never going to appease it. Like it's never going to happen.
Yeah.
So if nothing else gets you to move away from that, maybe the insanity of realizing I'm never going to please everyone, no matter how much I twist, turn, contort, pull, rationalize, whatever, it will never happen.
Yeah.
So go. Be free. Be free, little bird.
Exactly. I think if people could just have that, to be able to just know that like it's not going to happen. So accept that and then move forward. And by moving forward, you're defining what happiness looks like for you. It literally will be like a weight like lifted of like, okay, what does happiness look like for me? We all get just like this moment, right? And to think that we're spending it just being so worried about others, of like what they think of us. And I mean, at the end of the day, matters what you think of yourself, but it took me a long time to get there.
Yeah.
Of like, who do I want to be? Who do I want to leave a legacy about? Like, what do I want people to think of me when I'm gone? Right? That's kind of also what helped me to kind of change, is just like, what matters to me is like, what do I want to put out there that I want people to remember?
Yeah.
Not somebody else's narrative. So yeah.
That 10 years with Lane Bryant, what an expansive experience. The travel, the confidence, the connections, just the positive zhuzh. It's a total game changer.
And people don't realize like how much you spend. I mean, I definitely think, reflectively, I spent a lot of time there. I definitely missed out on some critical parts of the kids growing up because, I definitely prioritized a career. If I could do anything differently, I definitely would always have used up that PTO every year versus letting it roll over, right? I definitely let way too much roll over, and I probably should have used it. So that would be like my one hindsight, is just to like PTO, like use it. Like, but I felt like they needed me all the time. I was like, oh my God, nobody else can do my job if I'm not there. And so like my loyalty was very much to like appease them. And I think we kind of get in that mindset sometimes as like women and growing our careers, is like, well, we can't stop because then the momentum would stop. Or like, what if somebody else came in and replaced us or whatever? Like, I think that's always like a thought for us. But they also say don't regret anything because it's what got you to the path of where you are. So I just look at it as like, if ever I'm presented an opportunity where I'm working like such an intense corporate gig again, I'm just going to make sure that I definitely use the PTO.
Yeah. So how did then the Lane Bryant experience start to sort of land, and then you picked up what you're doing with It Starts Behind the Lens?
So I was prior, when I was at Lane Bryant, I was traveling 2 days a week to New York. So like Mondays and Wednesdays, I worked in Ohio. Tuesdays and Thursdays, I worked in New York. I was first flight in, last flight out. And, Friday was a free for all, depended on where I had to be. And it was just a lot of hustle and the bustle, and the kids are growing. So made a shift in March of 2023 that I wanted to do something different. I wanted to kind of find my own path of like, what else could I do as an entrepreneur? And so Max Model Management was kind of how it first kind of birthed. Was I wanted to be able to coach and mentor other models, because what I wanted people, specifically when I thought about Ohio and I looked at the fashion scene, saw all these models with all this great potential, but they were doing like what I was doing in the early 2000s of like just doing all these TFPs and taking pictures for social, but never really making an income out of it. Like they're just kind of like, oh, I'm in this fashion show, I'm in that fashion show. And I'm like, but where's your career? And they're like, oh, I'm still over here waitressing, or I'm over here, doing this. And I'm like, that's cool. Like you have to, build up, but like, what is the path of success as a working model, not just like a free model? So when Max Model Management started, I was working with a photographer up in Philly to help me enhance my portfolio so that my agency in New York would have new images. And so I met Shannon. Shannon Fisk is an incredible photographer, and I had such an amazing time with her. And I was like, I need to bring you to Ohio. And that's kind of how It Starts Behind the Lens became birthed, is that we collaborate together to create these experiences where models can enhance their portfolios so that they can actually establish portfolios that they could actually land jobs with. So, just shooting pictures because you're pretty, you have to have purpose. Mm-hmm. Where are these images going? Who are we marketing to, right? And so at It Starts Behind the Lens, we create those experiences where we look at your current portfolio. We figure out like, what is it that you're needing? Is it beauty? Is it activewear? Who's the client that you're going after? Where are you marketable? If you're 5'1" and you're like, I want to walk the runway, and I'm never going to tell you that you can't do it because I'm somebody that's defied the odds. But I also know that that's not going to be your bread and butter. Runway is not going to be your bread and butter. So how can I teach you how to make money at your 5'1" height? Beauty. It's probably going to be all about skincare, right? Because has nothing to do with height as a model. So these models that are just like very short and they're like, how will I do it? Maybe you're a petite model, because that is a thing. Like there are bookings for commercial gigs for petite. So we go through that portfolio. We figure out what is your best path. How are you going to make the most money? We market that. We make sure we style that for that client, right? If we think that like Banana Republic is your client, or Farm Rio is your client, or Macy's is your client, then we're going to make sure that you are starting to look that part so that the agency, and a lot of times some models don't have the right agency. So we make sure we plug them into the right agents, right? We've worked in this industry for so long. We know a lot of the great people and not great people.
I was going to say, you have probably the connections and the experience to be able to have these people avoid the landmines.
Exactly. It's literally like having a safe sister or a friend in this industry, because that's the hard part. When you're journeying on this place, you don't know what parts are like good or bad and what things to be looking out for. So kind of being this coach, this mentor, it creates a safe space that I'm like, I'm going to help guide you. I can't make sure that like the biggest agency lands you, but I can definitely plug you into the right places. And if you have that right look, that's going to happen for you. So I always ask models to like list what are their top 5 dream agencies. Why are they the top 5 dream agencies? Because I also like to understand, like, because somebody might be like, this is my top agency. And I'm like, but why? Because it's a name brand. There's level A, B, and C of agencies, right? And a level A agency like a Wilhelmina, an IMG, an Elite, like all those, that's what everybody wants to go to, Ford, because people hear about it. But the reality is the people that are on those boards at Ford and IMG, the companies that are hiring from those agencies are chasing a person. They want I'm looking for Ashley Graham. I'm going to that agency, right? They're not going to those agencies as like a brand and saying, I want like a 5'10", ambiguously, ethnically ambiguous person, right? Like that's not what they're going. The castings are not general. They're looking for a person. If you sign with a level B agency, so you're talking like a Bicoastal, Estate Model Management, a Heyman Talent Agency, right? That's local to here. Those companies go to those B-level agencies and they say, we're looking for this kind of general person. Now, all of a sudden, you are in a pot to be able to be presented. So you'll actually make more money as a model aiming for a level B than you are at a level A. And so that's breaking a mold, right? Because models have always been told that the success is being Ford. The success should be booked and busy, right? That's where we should all aspire, is not necessarily being with the name brand of like here, but am I a working model? Am I making the career that I wanted? And you'll probably find that. Within a level B. So we teach kind of models also like having the right expectations, right? Also knowing that like maybe your first year, you might still need to keep your daytime job, right? And kind of float your modeling in between. And it might even be for 5 years, right? Because if we think about a successful business, it takes 5 years for a business to grow. And modeling, you're a business, you're growing. Mm-hmm. So we do these model workshops where we host them in different cities around the United States. We do normally like a 3-day experience. Well, it's 3 days for us. It's 3 hours for the client. But we go to a city for 3 days, and we each day have about 7 to 8 models that we are working with them on their portfolio. It looks like 4 outfits, 10 finalized images, hair and makeup's included. We have an assistant on set who helps unpack your bags, repack your bags, steam your clothes, so that when models come in, they are truly focused on developing their skill set. It's all about training them, right? There's no training at a job. Like when you get a new job, you're going to have 2 weeks to be trained, right, for that position. Mm-hmm. Modeling, there's none of that. You get booked, you need to come on to the set that day and know what you're doing. So this is kind of like that. This is training for models to be able to, when they get presented an 8-hour workday, that they know exactly what to do. Because posing for 8 hours, people would be surprised. Most people can't even pose for 1 minute straight, right? So imagine like 8 hours of coming up with new, interesting poses for this commercial brand. People look at the paychecks, right? And they're like, oh my God, models made $1,500 for one day or $3,500 for one day. Well, that's because we're not going to get 2 weeks of training paid, right? Of like a 2 weeks paycheck. We're going to get in one day, we need to know exactly what to do. So while they do look like one big paydays, just know that the training and the work that you didn't get paid to do up front is like what led you to that, So it is, and there's nothing worse than having a client be very disappointed that in that 8-hour day, like you didn't know what you were doing. You want to be that repeat model at that place. So you have to, the first day that you're in there, you have to show them of why they should book you again.
So maybe I should go to your workshop.
I 100%.
Max, I'm coming. But I'm not going to model. I'm just going to come and just be the riffraff.
Well, you know what? I tell people all the time, if you have even the desire that you're like, I want to have model-like images, right?
Yeah.
And like, I'm your girl, right? Because it's even what you're doing right now, right? Like it's personalities, it's being in front of the media, right? Having a strong portfolio doesn't necessarily mean that it's only for modeling. Like I'm there coaching you, I'm giving you poses, I'm helping you change up your face. We have hair and makeup included. Like it's very much like I would say even if somebody's like, I'm an actor, I'm a TV personality, I do social media, like these kind of experiences are kind of good for everyone because like you said, it can be painful to be like, what poses am I doing? Well, you have a model coach on set showing you exactly what to do. And we style you too. That's another thing that I think is really critical in model portfolio development is having a stylist there, right? We know how we'll always wear our clothes. We know how we feel in our clothes. But if you have somebody else like take the style and turn it into something else, now you're really having to get into character, right? And not just be who you normally are, but you're like presenting the character. So yeah, the wardrobing is like exponential. And it really does change the portfolios by having the wardrobe styling there as well.
I love that. So how often are you traveling now? Like, is this an easier career for you to juggle with your kids?
Yeah.
Because you're here more often?
I am. And I had like my daughter tell me the other day, she was like, it's really nice to have you home more. And I was like, thanks. You know, it was an adjustment at first to not be on the go all the time. But I really like, I love what I'm doing right now because I get to have like days like this.
Yeah.
Like I get to come in and do something fun, like with you. I get to, go on news stations or the experiences change every day. It's not always the same. And I'm still traveling, but just not as often. And so like when she has a play, I get to actually go to it, and so like a couple weeks ago, I went to New York for Marina Rinaldi. So I still am juggling a little bit of my own modeling on the side of owning this business. But when we do these workshops, they're like once a month, once every other month. So that's like the only time that I'm gone.
Yeah.
And then I get to do virtual Zoom sessions. That's the other great part is like I can connect with models anywhere and do these Zoom consultations with them for their modeling career. So it also opens up accessibility, right? I'm able to meet with people all over. So if we do a session in Pittsburgh, right, and then in 2 weeks they get their proofing gallery back, then I meet with them over Zoom and we go through strategy. We talk about like, you've got these pictures now. What are you doing with them? How are you selecting them? I walk them through their whole proofing gallery because a lot of times too, models don't realize you get your images back, but you have to select them. Well, how do models know which ones are the strongest ones to present, right? So I show them, okay, out of the 1,500, we show you everything because as a model, I want you to learn about yourself. I have what I call like a little Debo eye. One eye closes a little slower than the other, but I know that about myself. So when I start blinking too fast, I know to slow it down and open up my eyes. That's what I want models to learn is we all have quirks about ourselves. Learn yours and then learn how you need to like kind of adjust or work with it.
Yeah.
And so we'll go through the whole proofing gallery with them. I help them select their top 10 images that they get for their final edits. And then once those are edited, I'm like, okay, now what are we doing with them? We have to have strategy. So many models have no strategy within their career. They're like, I want to be a model. I'm really pretty. And I'm like, okay, what's your goal? And they're like, I want to be on Vogue. Or they're like, I want to walk the runway. And I'm like, okay, so you want to be poor. Cool. And because those are the places like editorial shoots, like on the magazines, we all think they look beautiful. They're stunning, but nobody on that set probably got paid. Like we don't realize it, but nobody got paid for that. It was literally just because everybody wants to do it. Nobody gets paid for those. The things that people don't want to do, like the e-com shoot of like the 2-step, rock step, back and forth and smiles, right? People don't want to do those ones because they're kind of boring. But they're the biggest part of the pay, right? You're going to make a lot of money wearing a swing tank top and some basic denims and just like looking happy. QVC, right? Like, is that the most like, wow, part of modeling? No, but is it really great pay? Absolutely, right? Yeah. Same with fit modeling. Fit modeling is one of the highest paid parts of the industry. And oftentimes models who are fit models feel like they're less than because they're behind the scenes and they're not in front of the camera. And it's like, you're making the most money in this industry because it's the job that is hardest to do. You're on your feet for 12 hours. You're standing like a mannequin. You have to have great posture, like all this. And so that was an interesting part of my journey is making a career out of a part that I was like, I want to be a print model. But the majority of my job was behind the scenes and was the best part. Highest paying part. So once I like also had that realization like within my career journey that like not being in front of the camera didn't make me less than, right? It was actually one of the most desired parts. Most lucrative, right? But I thought that not being a print model meant that I was like less than the other models. But not true. So now I teach models like strategy, understanding, right? Like feeling empowered by the things that make them money, right? So maybe you're a parts model and you're like, you know, just doing your hands or just doing your feet, or, you know, maybe you have an interesting earlobe that they like to shoot jewelry on, right? Like embracing those things, like, because I could see how somebody who's modeling gets into it and they're like, yeah, we just want to book you for your ear. You know what I mean? And you're like, but I want you to take pictures of my face. But it's like, okay, well, if my ear is the shape that you want and like it works for earrings, let's do it. Right?
You got to take the ego out of it. Like, you want the hair, they can have my ear.
Yeah. See,
let's take some shots of my ear.
Let's try it. Try it. You might just land like the next, you know, like total ear Macy's earring campaign. And you're going to be like, so what do you do to make money? You're like, my ear. My
like,
ear
you see that ear, bitch? That's mine.
Right.
That's my ear. What's your man's name?
Oh, he goes by Steve, but his real name is Silas. But yeah.
Okay, so how does he feel about you being home more? Does he love it, or is he like take your ass back on the plane?
I think he loves it, because so when I was traveling all the time, he was the stay-at-home dad, and so that was also an adjustment, right? Society tells us that like the men work outside of the house, and so and also like as culturally, like in the African because so he's from Liberia, like in the African man like society, them being at home raising a family is like so different. So we even had some pushback like from like his side of the family of like, what is happening? But with the oldest children, I was the stay-at-home mom, right? When Aiden was going through his journey and I was doing the photography, right? And he worked outside of the home. With our last one, Viola.
I love that name.
Thank you. When we had her, I was basically, we had all of our kids, right? And then Cece went off to kindergarten and I was like, I want one more, right? I had total plans of being home with her and raising her like full time, just like the other ones. But I got presented this job 1 year in and I was like, I have to take it. Like, it makes sense. And so he ended up getting the opportunity to be the stay-at-home dad with her, and like their relationship is so special because he got all this like one-on-one time. Like, her favorite song as a toddler was Save Big Money at Menards, because he was constantly going into like, and so it would be so cute. You'd see this like little toddler girl and she'd be going around the house singing Save Big Money at Menards. But that was like what it was like being raised with dad home, right?
Thank you. I'm going to have that in my head rent-free all day long now. It's actually happening right now.
Right. Yeah.
When you shop Menards.
I was going to go into Q, but I was like, my voice isn't always that great on the sing. So that was good. Yeah. So he got to stay home with her and did all those things that I got to experience with the other ones. And then this last year when we kind of flipped and he went back into, he does a lot of entrepreneur, like construction things, and it's good. It's like he now gets to like live in his craft. So it's kind of like seasons too, right? Like, I had this like 10-year high of like a career and like super, super strong, but now we're able to kind of balance it out. We're both able to have careers that we're passionate about. And so he gets to grow his and I get to grow mine. Mm-hmm. Which is really nice.
Well, you're a badass.
Oh.
You are. You're just like a mold-breaking, like unapologetic, kind. You have such a good mix of softness and badassery.
Thank you.
It's rare.
Thank you.
I'm fucking feeling it. I'm feeling it.
Sometimes I feel like the kindness part plays more, so it's kind of nice to hear that you can see that edge, the determination, right?
Oh my God, I feel it. But I'm a magnet for that.
Okay.
So that's probably why my energy speaks to that very loudly. How can people find you? Somebody's out there right now listening, like, I'm beautiful, I want to be a model. Please help me.
Yeah. So our website is www.itstartsbehindthelens.com. And the reason why we chose It Starts Behind the Lens is it's all about reframing the future of fashion. So anyone who wants to be a model, we're going to teach you how, or we're going to give you the right presentation to become one, right? And there's experiences like, you know, in, what was that? August, I brought Mandy, the runway coach, here. I flew her in from Amsterdam, and we did runway training here for models, right? So these experiences are not only portfolio building, but they might be runway training. If you're a model and you just want to have like a Zoom consultation with me to talk about what is your career strategy? How are you going to get to the places that you want to be? How do you brand yourself to the right, we talked about, setting up what is those 5 brands of success, right? Like, for me, it was like Lane Bryant and a couple others. We identify those, and I help you figure out what is the career path to get to those ones. And I can help educate any model. So like, I don't want people to think that because I'm plus size, I can only teach you plus size modeling. I work with kids. I work with teens. I work with women and men and non-binary, right? And there are agencies out there that literally have boards for non-binary. Right. And I think it's important for models to know that there's space for everyone. It's just about being able to know, where do I sell myself? Where do I present myself to? What agencies are going to represent me and find me the markets that I need to be in? And so that's where I am that friend, that mentor, that coach that helps you unlock your keys to success. So we have an upcoming session in March of 2025 that we're doing back down in Cincinnati. Cincinnati is one of our favorite places to shoot because there's the most magical studio down there called Studio 821. And it's got a psych wall for high fashion. It has a carriage house for editorials and not editorial, but lifestyle. And so many great spaces that you can get a very diverse portfolio out of there. So we're actually already booking up for March of 2025, which is exciting, right? Because to think that we just started this, within the last year, and to be already booking into the next year, that makes me very proud.
I love that. You should be proud on a lot of different levels. You should be proud. What's your Instagram handle?
So my personal is Curves and Catwalks, and then the business is It Starts Behind the Lens.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for your time, Max. This has been just absolute pleasure.
Thank you for having me. I feel so excited to have done the first podcast now. I'm this was so much fun.
I'm just honored that it was me.
Yeah. This was great.
And if you're still out there following your girl, follow me on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, or wherever you get your podcasts. And until next time, hit the catwalk, baby. Hire Max and keep moving.
You did so good. You're so good at
you were great.
It's so amazing.